Hey, you. Welcome to the What Reading Book Podcast, the no boring zone where we get you all excited about books that are worth reading.
On the What Reading Podcast, you get some unbiased take on books, juicy scoops of what runs through the minds of your favorite author. You can call us your virtual book connoisseurs that help you filter through the many books out there and let you know the ones worth reading.
On this podcast, we talk about different book genre. We do not discriminate. From fiction to non-fiction, poetry, biographies, memoirs, you name it, so long as it is written by an author of African descent and project our very own authentic African stories. You can count us in. So welcome on board and thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of What Reading Podcast. Good to have you back. It's episode 7. I was super excited about the buzz and the feedback we've been getting from you guys. Thank you for always tuning in. And we're excited about this new episode because we've got a guest, a very important guest, if you know what I mean. I'm really excited about this one because it's an author that I really admire so much, and we're going to be focusing on his book and talking about his previous works. And without further ado, the book we're talking about today, by the time I mention the title, you can almost guess who our guest is A Broken People's Playlist by Chimeka Garricks. Hi, Mr. Chimeka Garricks.
Hi, Toby. Hi, Shay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for having me. Happy to be here. This is the point I'm supposed to do the intro about myself, right?
Definitely.
Okay. So my name is Chimeka. I call myself a Port Harcourt boy.
Evidently.
Wherever I am, anywhere in the world I am, I'm still a Port Harcourt boy. I was raised in Port Harcourt. I'm a writer and an editor. I have 2 books. First is a novel titled Tomorrow Died Yesterday, which was published in 2010. And I also have a collection of short stories titled A Broken People's Playlist, which was published in 2020 after a 10-year gap. I'm also an editor. I've edited a few manuscripts, some of which have made it into, some of which have been published. I love developmental editing in particular. One of the manuscripts that got published was Nearly All the Men in Lagos Are Mad, which I had fun.
We had fun. We had fun reading and even reviewing as well.
Yeah, for fun reading and just the whole just cooking it. Just cooking Nearly All the Men in Lagos Are Mad, and that was fun. Then there's a book called Days of Silence by Angel Patrick Zamigbe. It was also published by Masobe Books. I also had fun editing that one too. So yeah, so that's the and anything I do that
very
I enjoy.
Modest intro, right?
Sorry?
I say your very modest introduction.
My very modest intro. Let me blow my horn.
Yes, so please, it's your time, it's your chance.
Yeah, and I think I've started doing, which I enjoy. I teach. I've been lucky to be invited to teach a few master classes about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so and it's looking like maybe teaching is in my future because it's fun doing this. It's fun teaching. Yeah.
Talking about teaching, I like to teach though. I'm hoping that I can maybe retire as a teacher someday. You know, that kind of teacher that you've made all the money in the world and you're just going to teach them. So a cruise teacher. But I did enjoy teaching during my NYC. I had fun teaching economics then. So
teaching is fantastic because it helps you learn.
Exactly, it helps you learn. And I think it's very interesting to meet you. And one thing that I would always say is sometimes being a fan of a writer is a mix of many things. One moment you are adoring the writer for how they've created the perfect character that you love. Another moment you are literally just jeering at the writer, like, how would you do this? Like, why would you kill this character in such manner, or
Rip
why would
my
this
heart.
story end? Why would this story end like this? And but I think that what I've come to learn is the writer's world is almost like a mind that just rolls into infinity. You can think of anything and just start to put pen to paper. You know, sometime many years ago, I wrote a poem about the romance between ink and paper, and how just that action, or those actions, pen, ink, and paper, has done humanity so much good as well as so much evil. But that's for a later conversation. But I think it's the ultimate flex is being a writer, to be very honest. And how does it feel like for you? You know, being a writer, you've written two books that have gone into critical acclaim. You've written a couple, you've helped with production of some other books that have become bestsellers. Like nearly all the men in Lagos Are Mad is
It's a bestseller. Yeah.
bestseller without a doubt. Even those that do not really like to read, you know, just grabbing that book is always a conversation starter.
Yeah.
So how does it feel like being that writer that just has this flex? Or is there even more flex than you're even willing to let us know about?
Honestly, it doesn't feel anyhow. I don't feel like some type of way, like it's like, I don't feel different. You know, I enjoy the process of creating stuff, right? Creating stories and all that and telling stories. But after that, it's done. It's
on to the next one.
Not like on to the next one. It's just, I just move on with life. You know, I just feel, I feel, being a writer is important, but there are other important things in life. I don't know, like, so for my family is very important to me. So, you know, so I'm able to remove my writer hat and keep it, and like, okay, just be a guy at home, you know, or a guy at work, you know, when I was doing my 9 to 5, you know, and all that, you know. Then once in a while I back my writer hat on. Yeah, so it doesn't feel anyhow from by hammer like J.K. Rowling or Chimamanda or something like that. Maybe it just feels different.
It feel different, right?
Maybe it's me saying it now because, you know, I never hammer, but it's just, you know, for me, it's just you know, it's just one part of me. You know, it's not probably the most interesting part actually.
Really?
Interesting.
It's a big deal as far as I know. I don't understand why you're trying to play it more, play it so cool. I'm like, gosh, you guys wield so much power on people's mind, on people's imagination. And I remember when I was reading, what's the name? This book, A Broken People's Playlist. I just called up in my bed. There are 1001 other things I could be doing, but I knew I was just absorbed in, literally. I couldn't put it down. And I'm like, that's a lot of power to wield on someone that you do not know from Adam. And so I always imagine every writer to, you know, be some form of superhero. And
without holding a gun, you take my
it's
time.
Basic. It's like you know, you just.
I get that, you know, but I also think, like, you know, it's important to have a balance, you know. As a writer, I think, you know, that can be your entire personality.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so I've met writers who are, let's say, not nice people, right? But they've written fantastic, you know, work, or, you know, and all that. And yeah, I just take their work, you know, I just, you know, and I, you know, keep the fact that, oh, you're a shitty person or whatever it is. I just keep that, or, you know, I just take your work and, you know, or
I get it. Honestly, I do, and it's quite admirable if I do say so. Because again, I honestly feel that writers are very powerful, and knowing how much power you have to, you know, weld on people's mind with words and all of that, and you still strike a balance. You try to compartmentalize everything and understand that, you know, beyond just being a writer, I'm also a father, I'm a son, and so many things to other people. Is quite interesting. It shows that you're human, you're flesh and blood, and it's exciting to know that for me. And so one of the next questions I'm going to ask is sort of going to be like me harassing you, like, so when are we getting the second book? Yes, I needed to ask on behalf of
the main
the league of,
second book, right?
yes, Chimeka
The one
Garricks
that
fans of the
the
entire
one that
universe,
that you kept
please,
aside.
and decided to now whet our appetite and make matters worse. You know,
See, let me tell you guys the truth. So O2K, my publisher, right?
Yeah.
He's like on my neck for a novel, right? For that second novel, he's on my neck. He's like, when is this going to happen? The answer is by God's grace, by the grace of God, by the special grace, God willing.
Sounds
Let me say,
Nigerian.
like, it's Nigeria. Let me be Nigerian. The answer would be hopefully I'll finish it by God's grace, fingers crossed, next year.
Okay.
When it gets
No
published,
pressure.
I don't know.
No pressure. No
there's pressure.
But the
Pressure is
thing
getting worse now on this particular episode.
I refuse to.
You guys just
I
heard
refuse
it
to.
on What Reading
I refuse
Podcast
to- I
that
refuse to be under
Chimeka
pressure.
has given us his words.
You can't. No, the thing is that
You cannot
You're
categorically
not
tell us
talking now.
one now. What?
if O2K, have you as O2K pressured you before?
I know it's okay. I know what it's capable of.
Please. O2K is a pain.
Can
O2K,
follow up for Africa.
he can follow up. O2K has come and offered me, I won't say the amount of money. He now says, called me one day and said, you know what, bros, as this book day like this now, what if I give you XYZ amount? Say you go put.
Sharp guy.
To just go and finish it.
I say, O2K,
Just
I know-
go
I
to
know
one
collect money
island
because-
and
Let me say, I was like, not because I don't need money, but if I collect O2K's money, next morning, O2K will send me a message,
sure?
bros, I see my head, good morning.
No go rest.
I found my book now. So no.
Yeah.
But
I
the
imagine
thing,
there's
another thing
probably
is
also that pressure where you feel you want to make it.
I refuse to be under
good,
pressure too.
like-
I refuse to be on. I'm very good at like pushing that pressure away. To
yeah,
say,
I think that's very
I won't
important.
take-
It's
Yeah,
very
I won't
important
take
not to write on that.
Yeah,
It alters
I won't
many things. It alters how you write and even the eventual
Yeah.
output that you put out, that you get out. So no pressure. Well, on my end, I don't know what Toby's talking about pressure, but on my end, no pressure. We'll wait to see the
And
very,
the thing
very-
is,
May I
the
choose
thing is,
violence
another
today?
angle too. No, you can't. Even if you're holding my shirt like this, even if you're here holding my shirt, like you can't make me write. I'll write when I write it.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But one other thing is, I still think I'm on a journey in my writing career. Like I'm still learning stuff. So I started with a novel. Then I wrote a collection of short stories. And as the time I wrote the collection of short stories, I felt like, you know what? I'd rather be a short story writer than a writer of novels.
Okay.
Now, the
Why?
thing is, I just enjoyed it. And like I said, it's a journey. I'm still discovering myself.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, in the business, for some reason, they prefer you to have a novel. Short stories, for some reason, people don't really like shorts. But publishers, for some reason,
Yeah, they don't.
they don't really want to put their money behind short stories. So, and now I'm thinking, okay, I enjoy writing short stories. Maybe I should write a screenplay.
I was actually going to ask you about that one. Like every single
so I'm
short
thinking, yeah,
story
maybe I
there
should,
would have been made a very great BBC series, for example, or some a script that an Ebony Line
Yeah,
can
exactly.
take up and.
So,
And I actually look forward to a moment when our writers would begin to churn out works that can actually be adopted into series, and because we've got very great stories out there that can be adapted into so many movies, into series.
Yeah, I think a couple of
there are
them
very
are a
few
couple
scriptwriters
of them
out there.
are out there. Yeah, there are a couple of books that have recently even made it to to the screens. I know sometime last year Sefiata Swallow was on Netflix.
Yeah.
Recently
Wole
Wole
Afolayan.
Soyinka's Election Yoba
Yeah,
is on
okay.
Netflix as well. So yeah, I believe that the
contemporary
industry is
work,
beginning to
though.
mature a lot more. Sorry?
I said I'm looking forward to more contemporary works. I know for Lola Shunen's The Secret Life of Papa Segi.
Yeah, Secret Life of Babasek is what.
I can't wait to see what that would look like. I hope they do justice
Yeah,
to
me
the
too.
book. Yeah. So it would be fantastic to have this, the Broken People's Playlist. I was
Yeah.
while I was reading some of the stories, I was just imagining who the perfect character would be for, some of the stories, and I'm like, I imagine a Bimbo Adeboye in one of the ladies, and I'm like, okay, let's see how that goes. But yeah, it's a
No, let
beautiful
me tell
one.
you. Let me
Which
tell you where she will be. I put a
which one?
spell on you.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, she has the right dose of drama for that
Yeah, that,
particular one. Oh God, it would be epic. Like, I'm so sure
that's
she's
where
going to
that's where she.
do justice. She'll be Moji, and see,
Yeah,
she looks like emoji anyways by default. So as
yeah.
she's Yoruba, come on, she has that sass and everything. So this is us like giving all these movie producers a hint, like, go check out this book. It's a worthwhile one, and it's a
Yeah.
great story. Which brings me to really, diving into more details about this book, because that's what we're talking about basically. I I have a couple of stories here that are like my favorite. I want to start by asking Chimeka which you thoroughly enjoy writing the most. I know, of course, asking a writer which book one you enjoyed writing the most, or which stories is favorite, is like asking you to choose your favorite child. But please indulge us. Let us attempt to at least tell us the one that you have sort of like a soft spot for, or one that you have sort of like a bias for, basically.
Um. So I mean, you've already taken out you've already answered the question. For so I
Who
can
be your
tell
favorite
you. I
picking?
can tell
People
you.
say no.
Okay, so I'll put it like this. There's some stories I hoped I'm happy I wrote for various
Yeah.
reasons. So one of the things when I was writing a Broken People's playlist was one of the things I was trying to do, like I said before, I'm trying to, I think I'm still growing as a writer. I'm still developing certain things. So one of the things I wanted to do was to be able to write female characters
Okay.
plausibly, right? There's this trope, this or something about, they say men don't write, women very well. And looking back at some of the ideas, you know how it is. At the time I wrote it, it was the best I could do, right?
Yeah.
Looking back at it now, I was like, I wish I'd written this better or written this. You know how it is.
Yeah.
You grow as a person. So one of the things I wanted to do was write women better, and I wanted to be able to write a story, and if someone reads it blind, the person won't be able to know if it's a story about it from a woman's
A
perspective,
woman.
and if someone reads it blind, the person won't be able to tell. Now, I
That
don't know
was a
if
man
I've
that wrote it.
achieved that. Yes, the person will be telling if it was a man or a woman who wrote it. So I don't know whether I achieved that, but I compared to where I was in 2010 as a writer, I've grown, and I think I've
Yeah.
written women better now. So all the stories involving women from female perspectives, I'm happy I told those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then also there are certain stories I wanted to tell from a man's perspective, from men's perspective, right? Stories about like
I
how
can't stop laughing because of I put a spell on you. Like, it's just the perfect dose of humor. Everything was just on point. And talking about whether or not you did justice to, depicting the female character perfectly, I think you did. Maybe over time you've taken time to, observe more women. You get it, like how the woman's mind work, and there were parts where I could relate to some of the palace, the analogies, and the conversation between Moji and I can't remember the name of the other characters though. So tell us, who were the
so
women
we
in your lives that help you get better at this? Did you run the manuscripts through them? Were you probing them? Like, what runs through you now? What did they do in their head when
yes.
this thing is happening? And like, how would you react if this happens? And then you began to, try to pen that particular scenario down? I'm just curious, really.
Yeah, so
Because it was
obviously my
to a
wife,
point.
so I typically my writing process involves me writing something and giving her to read. And
Yeah.
if she says it's good, it's good. If she says it's not good, sometimes I'll argue with her.
Oh,
Yeah.
But I will
You
later
should
find out that
follow
she's
her.
right.
You should follow Chimeka's wife, by the way. Shout out to her.
She's always right. As much as it's pains me to say, she's always right. So far. So yeah, then I have female friends, and I've sent to them, say, read this, read this. What do you think? How would this person react like this? The person is like, okay, yeah, you understand, and I've gotten that feedback. And of course, I'm also like, one of the things I enjoy doing is watching people. So obviously met people in life, met men and women, I've lived an interesting life, met many men and women, and, you just watch people and, like do this armchair psychoanalysis, of what makes them tick, why they react like this, and why they react in certain ways. And so it's fun to do. So by the time you've seen several people, or several, let's say, men or several women behaving a certain way, or you can put it in a story, and it's there's certain stereotypes, but you find out that in reality, like, those things. So let me give you an example. People who, like, in my experience, girls who were looked at as wayward, right, or who were very sexualized and all that. If you get to know them, it's either, sometimes it's, of course there'll be exceptions and all that, but
Yeah.
many of them have maybe daddy issues. Many of them were sexually assaulted, and this even happens to guys who are very, very sexual, right? Many of them were like, maybe some of them suffered, a good number of them suffered some form of sexual abuse as children or something like that, and and it plays out obviously in their relationships and all that. So you see someone, like one of the stories,
song for someone.
Song for Someone and Desperado. Those stories. I've met several people like that. That and when you just peel just the top layer, and you just find out about these people, this is where they're coming from.
Yeah. So talking about one question I was always going to ask is, how many of these lives have you lived? Is a question I always like to ask writers, because I know a writer's mind can be anybody at any time. A writer's mind can be anywhere at any time, but sometimes the seed for some stories are actually born from the lives that a writer has lived or had or hope to live, right? So I'm just curious, when I read the story about, and one thing I must talk about is, kudos to the dynamic stories that you told. There are stories about police brutality, there are stories about infidelity, there are stories about, difficulty in even childbearing, for instance, and that whole process, how either the man begins to doubt himself and think that, some, like Nollywood would depict to us, was it that one lady cursed him from way back because he made her
So
have an
refreshing to get a male's
abortion.
perspective on those issues. Yeah.
Yeah, there are stories about cultism. And but funny thing is, the story that I still love the most is the very first story. And I feel that that's a grand entrance into the book. Once you read that, you are like, nah, if this is the first story, then I'm in for a treat. right? And just looking at. So again, back to my question, so I don't forget what I asked. Like, how many of these lives have you lived, and what were the influences aside from knowing people that have gone through certain situations? I bet you that some of those stories may not have been other people. Some of those stories may have also been fictional, clearly, but there would have been likely one or two that are more of lived experiences, sort of.
Yeah. So the stories are all fiction, obviously, right? Let me say this
Disclaimer.
from the gate. The stories are all fiction. But the fiction is influenced by lived experiences, right? So people you've met, things you've done in life and all that, and in life, right? Even if you live up to 90 or 100, God gives you long life, right?
Yeah.
There's a limit to how many mistakes you can make, or there's a limit to what you can
of course. Do. Otherwise, you'd have
so
been
you
likely
learn from
dead or
those
something.
mistakes, right? And, when I think I also try to do is to write relatable stories. So the first story is like lost love, right? It's a story of, and almost everybody, even if it's not you, it's your guy or your girl or your friends or your cousins, or you'd have heard that these people they were supposed to be together, but somehow it didn't happen. I mean,
Yeah,
it's something that's
actually.
relatable. You understand? The same thing with what's it called, fertility issues and all that. It's something that it's common. Lots of people. Except I think, okay, let's say at my age, right? I've met people who have maybe if I was 20, it wouldn't come. It wouldn't. Those kind of things. Those kind of discussions would be had in my circle. But by the time you get to 30, you get married. By the time you get to 40, you will hear of somebody a couple or something who has who's struggling, and all that, and it's just little things, just wanted to tell all that, then lived experiences come in because, okay, you've met a few people like that, you can tell. So, for example, the Confra story, right? You can tell that if you've met Confra guys, that some of them are bad and some of them are very normal.
Yeah, actually.
Just, your next door neighbor, you understand? The guy you grew up with, who you played football with, you went to school with and all that. And, he's just there. He's as ordinary as that. He has, of course, there'll be guys who come and shoot you for nothing. But there are guys that are your next door neighbors who would, so that's it.
Well, that's quite interesting to hear, and I quite agree with you. Right, there are many of these things around us. Many of these things happen to people around us. Just on a lighter note, I liked how you ended. I put a spell on you. So what I liked about it is, seeing the proposal, I'd assume that, oh yeah, this guy has come to his senses. How can you be over 40 and just stringing a woman along and all of that? Until you wrote the phone call, and I'm like, oh no. And then that thing you gave me is working. I'm like, oh my god. That was a very good plot
the thing
twist.
was, I didn't plan to. I'd written the story to the point where the story was about. So I put a spell on you. Let me give you the background. My wife used to work in a company and with lots of men, right? So there was this gist about some guy who suffered this thing, like his wife did this thing to him, like and his guys were laughing at him. And
I like all those kind of gists.
So it was, and she comes and she gists me and like, this Oga, they said he did this is what happened to him, right? And we laughed. And I thought about it and I was like, okay, maybe I should write a story about this, And, if you've lived, men and women's relationships, dynamics, guys come across like, oh, we're the ones who are doing the chasing and all that. We're the ones who are smart. Meanwhile, women are if you're a guy, at least you should know this.
Thank you for
Men
giving
are
us
a lot
credit.
smarter. Men are a lot smarter and a lot, you understand? And so it was funny. I just I did this. I did the story like that. Just thought of characters. And it was supposed to be like, oh, this guy. The story was supposed to end where he, supposed to have an inconclusive end. Like, hey,
Yeah.
he still can't get it up. He ends his story. He tells them about his time in Abuja, and when he comes back, and he still can't get it up, and blah blah blah. And that's the end of the story. So I'm planning to end the story there, and something just says, okay, why don't you just, make Mochi like more badass? Just give her, make her be one to help this guy propose and all that. And that was it.
That was a good one. I was so excited about the perfect comeback, and don't try women, honestly. I honestly feel that for men that actually are fond of that, like sometimes they meet their nemesis in form of women who have to devise more ways than one to curb their ecstasy. So for me, that's a good one. I just wanted to dive a bit deeper to understand what like your writing process is like. So I imagine that for every single story, they were built around specific themes and subject matter, which are quite critical. So I know you touched on issues around infidelity. There was a bit of um, domestic violence as well somewhere. Like Sherry rightly mentioned, something around police brutality and all of that. So I'm like, okay, you knew you wanted to write a collection of 12 stories that were built around, music and soundtracks. So was it like you had a list of some subject matters that you wanted to touch on and build your story around, or it just happened? So what's like your writing process like? That's just if you could let us into that
So
mind of yours, it would be phenomenal.
it just happened. But when it happened and I put it all together, I saw like certain patterns, right? So I think I wrote about it at the author's notes. Like I was supposed to write a novel, I didn't.
Yeah.
I started
Yeah.
writing one story, and I wrote another one, and I wrote another one, and I wrote another one. Then as of the time I'm like at the fourth or fifth story or something like that, and I'm now like, okay, you know what, maybe I should do a collection, right? Between fourth and sixth, I'm not exactly sure now, and maybe I should do a collection, but there wasn't, so there wasn't like there wasn't a pattern. It was just more like, what else should you write about now? And should I write about now? And, something will come up and I'll just start writing, and by the time I finished, I just realized that most of the people I'd written about, they had issues, and many of them were seeking some form of redemption, right? So I could see that common thread around that.
Yeah.
And like I said, many of you were broken, and I maybe I enjoy it so much. I like writing flawed characters, deeply flawed, deeply messed up people, because I think they're more interesting than
Perfect humans. And
normal
mean, we're all flawed anyway, so it's just
exactly.
Oh yeah.
good reflection of
All
our
flawed.
humanity.
Um,
Amazing.
Chronologically, so some things were around. I just remembered now. The story about the story Desperado, right?
Yeah.
Chronologically, I think it was the second to the last story or something.
Yeah. Second to last in the book.
Chronologically, no, in terms of when I wrote it, because the way I wrote it is not how it's arranged. It's arranged in a different. The first story I wrote was actually music, right? But music is number two on the this thing. But Desperado was, I think, chronologically I think it was almost the last story. But I was good to go with, I think, 10 stories, 10 or 9 or something, right? And there's this Desperado, what prompted it? there's this guy who went to secondary school with me,
Okay.
and went to secondary school together from like I joined the secondary school in JS2, right? And he was already there, so we did secondary school together, did university together, went to the same university. Now he when it was secondary school was mixed. There was a time when, let's say, we're 12, 13, 14, going through puberty and all that, and we had girls in our secondary school, and him and one other guy, they used to live in the same neighborhood, and they used to, but both of them were very, for want of a better word, they were very randy boys then. They used to, they were like really, back then. I mean, we were all like little rugrats running around, and like getting to know women, or getting to know, we did some silly things, but they took it like several notches. Like, even for us then, we're like, what's wrong?
You guys were the Jew
Yes,
men.
what's wrong? We're like, what's wrong with this guy? So even back then. So, this guy is several years, married, went to university, and he was always in girls' rooms. And I used to see him, like, back then the joke was like, me and him, the joke was like, "Oh, dude, not only for baby boomer, they see you, blah, 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 blah," right? Anyway,
I don't mean like that.
fast forward several years, we form a secondary school WhatsApp group, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
We get together, we're all in Lagos, get together for something. We go for drinks, right? And he starts telling us that, a few of us, like 4 or 5 of us, and he says, oh, that, him and that other guy, that guy that was his closest friend,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that they were both abused
Oh, wow.
when they were kids. One of them was their house help, one of them was a cousin or something like that. I forget which is which. And suddenly it all made sense. So this is all sitting down as
Bunch of
men
men
now,
over drinks, over
and it suddenly this guy's life made sense, because, like I've said, I've known him since JS2, and how he was. And I was like, what, I'm going to write this.
Can we take a minute to talk about how men actually deal with issues of abuse and
Issues of-
how our society, issues around, abuse, especially when it happens at a very young age, like how do men deal with it? Oftentimes the attention is always focused on like the female folks, and I think there are more opportunities and there's more awareness around, women breaking the silence and, talking about some of the trauma they've experienced from this shabby situations. So for men, I don't even think men come to a place of admittance. Or Shay, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think nobody really deals with it, right?
They just tend to live
Nobody
with
really
it
deals
and
with it.
continue to be broken.
Yeah,
people
because
and-
in the real sense of it, when you say deal with it, you are more or less referring to dealing with it while it occurred, right? So whatever abuse occurred at a time when they couldn't deal with it, they couldn't do anything about it. And so whatever they are doing after that is living with it, living with or without it, right? So some people choose to live with it. So here's the thing about living with it. Some people live with it and are still better off. Some live with it and are worse off. Some live without it and are better off. So what I mean by that is some people have just, choose to numb it and they never think about it. Yeah. And they just, trudge through life. For some other people, they just cannot, turn it off, and it becomes an enabler for them. Those memories just sort of fuels, either it's vengeance or it has sort of, opened up a sweet spot, or it has opened up a sweet spot for them. So I don't believe anyone learns to deal with it. I feel that we just learn to live with or without it, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, Chimeka, what's your take?
In addition to what you've said, I think, at least in Nigerian context, right, or rather, especially in southern Nigeria, and apart from my story, I've seen various threads on Twitter, and sometimes I've seen, someone says, "Oh, guys, talk about this," and guys have talked about it, and it's been eye opening. So the first thing is, especially if it's an older lady abusing a guy, a young boy, it is sort of like you're expected to enjoy it, right? And if you speak to guys who have suffered this thing, many of them at some point they enjoyed it to an extent, right? But it's a conflicting thing because this is a terrible thing happening to you, and many of them are conflicted about the fact that they enjoyed it. Like I said, the guy that this my friend, my classmate, he said the same thing, and most of the guys who I've seen who have talked about it, they've said the same thing. And, it's like, our culture is like,
I think
you're
it's
getting
double standard. I mean, if it
yeah,
happens to
it's a double standard. Exactly. It's a double
it's not
standard.
considered
It's
that
not.
way.
You understand?
That
Your guys will laugh
pleasurable.
at you. Your guys will
Yeah.
laugh at you to say, if you're 16 and let's say if you're 14 or something and let's say an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, even in the West, you understand, we have excuse me,
We have school
when you see
teachers
stories
that are
of
hitting on
female teachers
students.
and all that.
Male
Go to the
students.
comments, people be like, why is he, people will be like, I want to beat this guy or whatever, right? But the truth is, people, it affects them in several ways because many of them struggle in having proper relationships,
Yeah.
many of them struggle, with infidelity, struggle with like high libido. It's crazy. And, like sometimes this year I saw a thread, of some people, some guys talking about it on Twitter, but it was very sad, because they'll tell you like, they'll say things like, oh, they can't, they can't stop, porn or whatever. It's just, and that kind of innocence has been lost. And Nigeria doesn't do I think every Nigerian needs therapy, but Nigeria doesn't.
Yeah. Nigeria.
Nigeria
In itself.
You're on your
Nigeria.
own, you're on your own in this world, so you deal
Yeah.
with it like G said, you have to deal, find a way to deal with it, but it's what it is.
Yeah, I think just coming out of that immersive conversation, one thing I really liked about the book is how deliberate you were about telling a story of Port Harcourt, one way or the other.
Yeah.
So not just about the cities in Port Harcourt, even some of the tribes in River State now, some of the streets, some of the places, and the names of people, right? And, I was telling Toby, I said that I'm tired of reading of Oshodi or streets in Lagos. And I really enjoyed that part of the book where, every story was woven around somewhere in Port Harcourt. So, and I actually enjoyed reading The Chase, The Chase, where you talked about police brutality, how, the officer chased through different points of the streets and all of that, how you talked about the slums and all. In as much as that was a very sad story, and it's a very sad but very real story, right? I have a close friend that's thankfully he didn't lose his life, but I wrote about it on my blog some time back. He was traveling. And he was traveling to somewhere. I think it was going for an event in one of the private universities in the southwest. And he went by a public vehicle and they stopped his bus. And just by glancing into the vehicle, they just literally handpicked a few young men out of the bus. And he slept in the cell overnight. And he said that the only thing that saved him was that one of the people that was also picked was an indigene, of that community police station was. So news had gotten out, he had been picked up, he's in the cell. And when, they had come to bail that guy, he just literally begged the guy that, please just help me. Because his phone has been taken, he couldn't reach out to anybody. And it was in a strange community, he didn't live there. And that was the only way he could get out of police custody. And I can imagine how many other young men across Nigeria face this kind of situation. So I would say thank you for also putting in the book. I think that if I were to, read this book, I would say that the range of topics you touched on with, it's okay to read short stories and, read feel good short stories. But I think sometimes we really want to read about what really happens around us. And these stories are not far-fetched. They are literally our day-to-day life, the day-to-day lives of our neighbors, of our friends, of our compatriots in other parts of the country, our church members, our neighbors, name it.
Yeah.
This is the real life of an average Nigerian. And, it's hard to say, would I then say that the average Nigerian is synonymous with being a broken person? Well, that's a question to ask myself.
Whether you like
Nigeria
it or
is
not, we are all
like-
broken. We are all flawed in different ways.
Yeah, we're all broken. But Nigeria, it's we all have this love-hate relationship with Nigeria.
Yeah, actually. I think Nigeria has broken us to a point where we've come to terms with being broken. And we're literally just moving around in that brokenness. My guy, you're so broken. So it did for you.
Yeah. Very quickly, Chimeka, do you want to tell us about your love and ties with Port Harcourt as a city? I don't know what is it about that city, right? Like an average Port Harcourt person that I meet is always quite mysterious. Like they are vocal, like they go tell you as to be. You get what I mean? And they are always.
Well, at least we see what Wiki is doing around the country. So
please,
yeah, we see what
tell
Wiki is
us.
also doing and the live bands and all. So that's a good Port Harcourt
It's
ambassador.
award-winning live band.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, let me be honest, right? We all grew up in different places, right? And I think if you have happy memories from where you grew up in, that place chances are that place would be like a thing for you, like, So, I grew up in Port Harcourt. I loved Port Harcourt. It's a different Port Harcourt to the Port Harcourt I grew up in. The Port Harcourt I grew up in, honestly, it's a different Port Harcourt from what it is now. Right, it's but it was a far gentler Port Harcourt. It was like back then it was a civil service town. It was just chilled, and it just had its own vibe. There were lots of parties. It just had this chilled, grooving, let's have fun thing. That Port Harcourt is never coming back. It's the Port Harcourt I grew up in. It's never coming back. It's just there. It's dead. And I miss it. So part of the reasons I write about Port Harcourt is it's sort of like a love letter now to, like, how your first love, person has moved on and moved on to some other person, and you're just the person is never going to come back, but you still glance.
You're still holding on,
you're just so that Port Harcourt is never coming back, but it was a really nice place to grow up in during my time.
That's great to hear. Toby, where's Port Harcourt for you? Or where's that place that you remember and you're like,
I know the funny thing, it's the same thing. You can say it about any other city, right?
Exactly.
Port Harcourt will look at Lagos and be like, these people are crazy. Like there's only to go in this place.
All I've known all my life.
And Lagos will look at any other city outside Lagos and be like, we can't live here. Like,
exactly.
It doesn't have the vibe. It doesn't have the energy. Like,
no, I think that's after a while. Though, when you live Lagos for some time, you initially there's that struggle. You want to go back to Lagos. Lagos has the vim, it has a vibe, it has the energy. But when you, like, it happened to me though, and I moved out of Lagos. I moved to Abuja. And for the first 8 months, I really wanted to get back to Lagos. I missed everything about Lagos. I missed the traffic, actually. I missed the traffic as well, right? But I was in Lagos recently, and I always can't wait to get out of Lagos.
What's wrong with all these people? You'd be like, what's wrong with all these Lagos people? What's it like?
I love it, please. I love it. I miss it. It's a love-hate relationship for me.
Exactly. It's a love-hate relationship. Lagos is that city for me that I always want to be in, but I just can't wait to get out of. So I think that's the story of Lagos and me now currently. But anyways, I think it's been a very, very good conversation with you, Chimeka, and we really can go on and dive into the different stories we've spoken about, and the motivations behind the stories. But one thing that I would say, just in closing, is I look forward to the next book, right? I look forward to. There are very few people that write immersive stories that will draw you in, and if you're not careful, you could just feel a tear drop somewhere. And I think that's what this book was about.
A grown-ass man cry. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, of course,
That's something. That's something.
Because one thing I've reiterated all through this episode is how these stories are real stories, right? As much as it's fictional, you really. I could see the guy, and I keep making reference to the police brutality story. I really could see the guy running off. I really could see the guy being hounded into that vehicle. I could see him being shot at, and then what? Onto the next young man, right? I could see the lady that her father had left her for so long, and she had lived all sorts of lives, and I could see the young boy that was defrauded. He was trying to get an agent. So I think anyone should just grab this book and see these stories for yourself and see how close to home they really are. And so I'll also say thank you for writing it, because something I always say, I've said it on one episode and I'll say it again, that sometimes we don't choose the stories choose us, and if we don't write it moves on to the next person. So thank you for yielding to the stories and writing them and not allowing it move on to the next person. Maybe Toby would have written it.
I would have done justice to it. Let me just quickly admit, Chimeka is a fantastic storyteller, and the stories couldn't have been told better. There was no better person to tell them than him. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just want to touch on quickly on the point Shay made about, like, if you don't write a story, it's going to leave you and go to someone else or something like that. There's also to that, like, there's certain stories that should be told over and over and over again, right? It's just like the Bible, like the four Gospels, many of the stories there were told like from four different perspectives.
From different perspectives.
So I'm hoping that more people will tell, different stories about, like, for example, police brutality in Nigeria. I read one story by, her name forgets me. I think it's Francis Ogamba. It's called Sugar. But it was fantastic. It's a story about police brutality, and it was up there. And I even put it in the class that I taught. In a class I taught, I put a link to the story and told them to go read that story. For stories about, for example, confras in school, Ego Semas, when he did Fine Boys first, right?
Yeah.
And Fine Boys was, and when I wrote that story, I also mentioned Ego Semas Fine Boys in the story, because it was like, was a big influence and all that. And I'm hoping that more people write, stories, maybe see me and Ego Semas, stories and, write theirs.
Great point. It's very important to have varying perspectives about, this topics, these stories, because we can't tell them enough. And there's always, like you said, there's always something new, there are fresher perspectives to always see things through. There are new lenses you can always, put over new stuff from. So it's really refreshing to get your take. And there's just something so powerful about how you told yours. It's super emotive, and it's something that would linger on and would even drive further conversation and help people to, explore those issues and perhaps make better decisions. And I think that's one of the things that make writers very powerful. Like, without even trying so hard, influence minds, nudge people towards the right direction. So thank you so much for this. On that note, we will be calling it a day.
Thank you so much.
But before we do, Shay, very quickly, let's rate this. What on a scale of 1 to 10, how many stars would you be giving to the Broken People's playlist? I say it is what
It's always a 10 over 10 for me. I will.
you are so
It's always a 10 over 10.
Yeah, man, no way you lecturer, unfortunately.
Yeah,
10 is for God.
I think this.
That is for me.
I think the stories. Yeah, I think the stories just get me. So I'm sold. Taking me away.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm actually so glad to hear that from you, as in from Iman, and it means a lot. For me, it's really like borderline 8.5 or anything vying towards that. And I'm truly looking forward to your next book. I should mention that on Goodreads, this book has been getting like, I think 4.4 stars and so many amazing reviews. It's really like great, top notch. That's so rare, hard to come by, and it says a lot about your gifts, your talent, and I can't wait for more people to read this book. And so we would be urging you to grab a copy where books are sold from reputable bookstores. I'm going to mention Ruby Night, guys. So aside from Ruby Night, you can always check out other stores. It's available on Amazon as well. And like I mentioned earlier, good news for the audience in the diaspora in the UK. HarperCollins just got the right to publish this, and I'm totally looking forward to the book reaching a more diverse audience. So congratulations on that yet again, Chimeka.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Would love to read and hear your thoughts. If you've read a Book of People's playlist, let us know on Twitter, send us a message, send us an email, and we'll be excited to respond to them and keep the conversation going. On that note, it is bye from me. Shay.
Bye everyone. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very enjoyable conversation. Thank you guys. And thanks to Robin Hyde for the support over the years.
It's a pleasure.